Are you buying or selling a home in Florida or maybe even elsewhere? Warning, beware. You're probably overpaying for services and being misrepresented or at least underrepresented when it comes to the transaction of either purchasing or selling your home. This is a huge deal. And if you're thinking about buying or selling a home, you're going to want to listen in, because today we're going to uncover a pretty dirty secret in the real estate industry when it comes to this transactions. And these are big transactions. Here's my co-host, Tony Shore. Welcome to the show, Tony. Tony, we're talking real estate today. And you know that I'm a financial advisor, so I advise on a lot of things.
Yeah.
Real estate being one of them, but I am not a real estate broker. And neither are you.
That's right.
But one of the investment advisors at Dolphin Financial Group does hold a real estate license. And I'm going to bring him in too, so we could talk about this issue, which is a big issue. It's kind of scary. And to be honest with you, I wasn't aware of it. I'm going to tell you the story of when I bought and sold my home. And I want to get your reaction and Jonah's reaction. Jonah, there he is. Welcome to the show. We're talking real estate. Jonah, you're an investment advisor, but you also hold a real estate license in the state of Florida. Is that correct?
That is correct. I am a realtor.
Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about a dirty secret. This isn't directed at you, because you enlightened me with this report. I'm putting it on the screen for the viewers on YouTube. They can read this. Consumer Federation of America suggesting that there's a problem here that people are just not aware of.
Yep.
And considering I wasn't aware of it, and I try and stay on top of this stuff, I'm concerned. So, in a nutshell, we're talking about fiduciaries versus facilitators. Tony, we've done shows on fiduciaries before. You've heard that, the F word, we called it.
Yep.
I think what people don't realize, a lot of times they don't realize when it comes to financial advice, that there's a difference between someone giving you just guidance on buying or selling something. Hey, here's a mutual fund, here's an annuity. They're not necessarily a fiduciary acting in your best interest. They're just facilitating a transaction. The same goes for buying and selling your home. So what I want to do is go through the 3 or 4 things that surprised me about transactions in real estate. And I'll start a quick story, and then I want to get your reactions, Jonah in particular, about this. So as you guys know, I lived in New York prior to moving to Florida. I lived in a lot of different spots, including Minnesota. And Tony, Minnesota's on the list of states that act like Florida. So you can't say Florida man. You can't use that.
This isn't a Florida man.
This isn't a Florida
situation.
Man story.
Okay.
This same scenario, fiduciaries, when it comes to real estate, is the same in Minnesota. So anyway, when I bought my first home in New York, I got a lawyer. That was just the standard practice. You got a lawyer to represent you, check things out. There was a real estate agent. There was someone to check the house, to inspect it. And then when I sold my house in New York and moved, there was a lawyer involved. When I moved to Florida, I rented for a bit, and I finally bought my home in Palm Harbor, Florida. This was years ago. And I remember saying, all right, do I need to get a lawyer? And no, there was we don't need a lawyer here in Florida. Not required. It's kind of like, you're okay. And I remember going to the home. I found the home, my wife and I, and we were going to buy the home. And we started dealing with the real estate agent that was the listing agent.
Sure.
Okay. So we talked to them and said, we did the open house and got to know them. And they said, oh yeah, what's going on? I'm the listing agent. And we started negotiating or talking with them and saying, yeah, we're interested. And we had this conversation with the real estate agent. They said, oh yeah, I'll help you with this process. And we thought, okay. Now my instinct was, I got to get a lawyer. And I said that. I said, I need a lawyer. And they're like, oh, you don't need a lawyer. We handle it all. Everything's fine. Alarm bells went off. I was like, I don't like this. But I continued because, we're buying a home and we didn't see any issue. We got through a few things. We started negotiating, and all of a sudden, the real estate agent was asking me for things that the seller wanted. Hey, he needs to see your bank statement to make sure you have enough money because the roof is a little sketchy. So we need enough money to fix the roof. I said, what are you talking about here? I started getting a little concerned that I was like talking with this real estate agent who was supposed to be helping me, but it was representing the seller. And I said, I need somebody. Luckily, I had some clients in Florida, and one of them was a real estate agent. And I called him up and said, hey, I found a house. I'm buying a house. Can you come represent me? He's like, absolutely. He came in the picture, and then everything went through him, and the story changed. All of a sudden, any questions or anything, I went through my person representing me, and he was like, oh, no, you don't do this or you don't do that. We need this information. You don't talk to this person. You don't, and I felt so much better because I had someone on my side that I felt was representing me. He didn't care about the seller. He cared about me, the buyer. Eventually, I bought the house, no lawyer involved, used my client / buying agent, and I guess they split the commission. I bought the house, end of story. Different than New York. New York, much more formal, much more legal. Here it was kind of loosey-goosey. Does that sound about right, Jonah? This is typical. And what did I not know at the time that you're going to tell me I should know now?
Okay, so there are different standards when it comes to your real estate agent. You either have what's known as a transaction broker, and you're never going to hear this. This is going to be in the fine print on the contract that you probably didn't read and won't read. But anyway, this is what it's referred to. It's referred to as a transaction broker, and their standard is as follows. They're to act as a neutral intermediary who assists both the buyer and the seller without representing either party. They provide information and facilitate negotiations, but they don't advocate for either the buyer or the seller. They also need to disclose, this is probably, it's in the fine print. This is what's disclosed in the fine print, that they are not acting in a way that is loyal to you or to your counterparty. They're effectively there to serve the transaction. They're there to facilitate the transaction. The paperwork, the coordination of the sale itself.
So you're saying they're just a facilitator?
Yes,
you're saying,
precisely.
Did you say that they have to represent both sides of this
transaction?
transaction?
It's effectively a non-representation. It's the most basic level of representation, which is effectively no representation, and it's just to act in a way that facilitates the transaction. So obviously, committing fraud is not acceptable, but to paint very, very, very broad strokes, there's a very minimum level of standard required in that transaction. Like the example that you gave, I think, like puts it, it hits the nails firmly on the head, squarely on the head.
I didn't feel like the selling agent had my best interest in mind at all.
Without a doubt, absolutely not. No, if their commission is based off of the sale price, that is firmly at odds with you, the buyer.
But in that relationship, that selling agent was supposed to be helping me as well, theoretically, transact the business.
Correct.
But the demands seem to be always coming from the seller through that agent.
The issue internally is listings are hard to come by. So when you get a listing, it's I wouldn't say it's easy to sell a property. It depends on the market that you're in. It depends on the property.
Right now, it's pretty darn
generally easy. Correct. It is a seller's market. But no, just generally, they're there to facilitate the transaction, and for them to advocate seemingly more so for the seller, I think is representative of them effectively having caught a fish and are using that fish to catch another fish, which is, I have a listing, like I'm going to make the commission for the sale of it, but like, let me also find a buyer for them as well and take that commission too.
I highlighted some language from that report. And Tony, I want you to look at these words: that a transaction broker, which is that the default in Florida and Minnesota?
Yes.
Jonah?
I can't speak to Minnesota. It sounds like you might be able to. I was trying to find the states on
There were 17 states that they allow this facilitator enroll. And in Minnesota, I did look it up. Minnesota, they're known as facilitators. In Florida, they're known as transaction brokers. 17 states allow for this, and they are not legally required to have loyalty, confidentiality, obedience, or to fully disclose. But I will say one more point before.
It sounds about right. Your situation, your experience, Dan, sounds exactly like my wife and I's experience when we bought this house. Exactly, in Minnesota. I've never heard of somebody using a lawyer to buy a house. That's a new one on me. And I have heard lots of stories. It sounds like what you guys are talking about is if we want to sell the house and we get a real estate agent to sell the house for us, and they find a buyer, and the buyer doesn't have its own realtor that hooked them up, they want the whole commission for themselves. So, I don't know where their loyalty is going to be, but they had a relationship with us first. And so maybe we know them or whatever. So if I'm the buyer, like when we bought this, the person listing it wanted to sell it, and I got that vibe too. So I went and got our own realtor, and they split the commission then, and I felt better about it. It sounds like where the trouble comes in like states like Florida and Minnesota, there's just if there's one realtor representing both parties, they're not really they're only representing themselves. And if anything, I would say they're going to lean bias toward the people who hired them in the first place or wanted to work with them, right?
That's what I was trying to express in far too many words. But
is this the case, Jonah, where, like, from what I understand, the default is this lower transaction as opposed to the fiduciary? And is there such a thing as a fiduciary?
Yes, there is. So you can hire a fiduciary. It's called a single agent, and basically it means I'm going to represent the buyer or I'm going to represent the seller. There is no double dipping. There is also a different standard. So whereas before we did not owe them loyalty, we did not owe them confidentiality, things that you would think are basic in dealing with any sort of counterparty in a transaction. Like, obviously you're not going to advocate for your counterparty, you're going to represent your own interests. But if you're acting as an expert where someone's like totally, at your mercy effectively, it's thought that you're going to be trying to benefit them. So like, it like really irks me, like emotionally, that you can pay so much money and then have them effectively not be working for you, like in any sense of the word.
Anyway, yeah, that's crazy because they're getting what, 6% or
yes,
whatever
I got
it is.
Some numbers. Real estate commissions 5 to 6% in the U.S. Great Britain less than 2%.
Oh yeah.
But you're saying that you could be a single agent. That's what you want. You could hire a single agent.
I don't want that. I'll make way less money. You, the buyer, you, the seller, want someone representing you. And if they're a single agent, they've agreed that they're representing you. And the standards are different.
And they're a fiduciary. So now they have loyalty to you, confidentiality between you, obedience to you, and they have to fully disclose everything to you. That's not the default, but that is an option. How does that work?
Yeah. What's crazy is there's a difference in the single agent requirement and the transaction broker requirement. So
time out. You're saying that every and this report was suggesting 98%. They did a Jacksonville study in Jacksonville, Florida. They took 500 transactions, and 98% were done by transactional agents, and the other 2% were by single agents.
It just makes it makes no sense. I'm basically taking on, like, by going into real estate with the objective, like, I'm going to serve my investment clients better and act in their best interest. Because if they go and hire a realtor, the chance that they're going to do that is like 0.
I would agree. Tony, did you get any sense when you were buying that things weren't being told to you?
I did. That's exactly what I felt like. When the realtor, the listing agent for the home, was supposedly representing the seller and us, and that's the way they present it. Like, they're representing. They're going to work hard for both of us and make it a deal. And yeah. But I got the sense that no, things weren't being disclosed to me that should have been. And, I got the sense that no, if anything, this person's representing the seller. They're the ones that initially hired him, and he's trying to sell this house. I'm trying to buy it. We're on different sides. I need representation, is how I felt.
And legally, the default is they're just facilitating it. And in fact, when I was reading this, Jonah, correct me if I'm wrong, as an agent in this process, you're not allowed to do the fiduciary things. You can't give advice. You can't say, man, I think you could get more. I think you should sell this. They just do that. But that's not technically legal. A transactional broker in Florida should only be, hey, this is the forms you need to fill, this is the paperwork, the listing, all that. They can't be like, hey, you should raise the price now because this buyer or that. That's all legal.
Kicking the hornet's nest,
but everyone does
doing that. Like, there are so many realtors in this county, and like, I definitely do not want to say that by them taking on additional responsibility and hopefully doing a better job advocating for both parties, they are in effect breaking the law. Even if they are breaking the law, like, I would hope that but that's, I think, what the issue that I ran into, like, with how people think about, even real estate brokers, even how they think about it. They feel like acting as a transaction broker, like, is the end all be all, because the compensation is effectively double. Why would I do more work to make half the amount of money? That doesn't make any sense. I'm going to do mental gymnastics to make it make sense for me to make the more money. And that's effectively what goes on. So 98% of the people that we're going to deal with are going to double dip and owe no allegiance to either party, and
with reduced liability.
Yeah, no, with substantially reduced liability. They're not expected to do anything.
So like, they can double dip and they have less liability. That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. Why is it set up this way?
That's the default
to facilitate transactions.
Yeah,
that's the whole point. Well, that's the whole point. That's the whole point. You don't want to. It's not. Go ahead.
You don't want to stop the grind. Stop the wheels of motion going of transactions. You don't. But this just seems really, the fault should be, hey, I have to act in your best interest. And then there should be a signed thing saying, hey, I'm no longer acting in your best interest. I'm just trying to facilitate this. Because I think it's just like fiduciaries in the financial services industry. You got people selling annuities. You got people selling mutual funds. They're getting a commission. Are they acting in your best interest? Legally, they're not required to.
And
spoiler alert, they're not required to. And people are like, what?
Some do,
right?
And that's kind of why it
and some do. But then there's others that take the next step, like us, which is we become fiduciaries. We're required to legally, and there's recourse. You're telling me you could do the same in the real estate industry? You could become legally a fiduciary by adding additional language to a contract?
Correct. It makes very little business sense to reduce what I'm going to make and then increase my liability in the process. That makes very little sense. But yeah, no, effectively, some people do choose to do that. And that is what I have chosen to do. So if you are going to be represented by me, we need to do additional paperwork in my state to agree that I'm going to do more for you and going to charge less. You need to agree to that. Like you need to, it's just, that's mind blowing to me that you don't need to opt into the lesser representation. You need to opt into more for less.
And no one does it because why would you put that burden on yourself legally and reduce your commission as a real estate broker?
My employing broker, when I brought it up, like couldn't fathom it. They were like, they were like, if you want to impose that on yourself, like go right ahead. Like clearly dismissive, clearly like not understanding. Like I'm coming at it from the perspective of the property owner or the prospective buyer. Like I want to be able to hire someone that's going to be on my team. Like, and that should be more widely available. Like that should be the standard. It shouldn't be anyway. I'm very idealistic.
People know
like,
about
that's why
this.
I'm getting into it for sure.
I didn't know. 17 states transactional is the rule, like basically the default, and there's allowable, which is absolutely crazy to me.
It's practiced in 17 states, but only in Florida is it not disclosed to customers.
Wow. Okay, so Florida is the only state
Florida
that doesn't
is
disclose
special. Once again, Florida. God bless Florida.
Oh,
can I say that? God bless
you
Florida.
Can. You absolutely can. You absolutely can.
So Tony, in real estate terms, down in Florida, you're getting beat up. No one's telling you about it. In Minnesota, they're beating you up with the Minnesota nice smile. Yeah. Because you should know it. Okay, let's conclude here. Looks like you got to know the rules. You got to know that there's a fiduciary option in real estate. And if you use a transactional agent, my recommendation would be you should be able to negotiate a lower commission. Hey, if you're going to double dip, if you're going to not be my exclusive agent and represent me in a fiduciary capacity and fill in that extra legal paperwork so that I could sue you if you don't do the right thing.
Right.
If you're not going to do that, then I'm not paying you the 5 or 6%. I'm only paying you 3%.
I like it. No, I think that we should go.
That's the way I would approach this. And if they say no, we're gonna, we don't do that, and you go and knock on 50 doors and you can't find a real estate agent that will do that, which seems reasonable in Florida that you may not. I would then hire a lawyer and say, hey, lawyer, I'm going to pay you to watch this transaction and make sure that no one's getting the best of me. Considering the price tag, Tony, you're gonna buy in Key West. Considering the price tag, my recommendation to you is either you find a fiduciary real estate agent, which Jonah is saying is not a default and it's probably hard, or you bring a lawyer into the table.
Yeah. Interesting. I never knew people would ever use lawyers in real estate just to buy a house. That's not a thing here in Minnesota. I mean, I guess unless maybe it's because I haven't operated on the level. I've never bought $1 million plus home like you, Dan.
Yeah, right. You're going to be selling your home, and if you're thinking about moving to Florida now, Tony, it's getting expensive here.
Yeah,
but
I know.
It's the biggest transaction. Yeah. It's the biggest transaction for people. Maybe student loans, but it's ridiculously a lot of money, and people just need to know this. So, Jonah, thanks for telling me about this, and thanks for taking the high road in a way and requiring upon yourself to take the fiduciary route.
Well, we know we can trust Jonah, Dan, because he wears a bow tie. That's how you know you can trust him.
To those who are listening on Spotify or iTunes, Jonah is wearing a bow tie. He's dapper for sure.
He's dapper.
It's his generation thing. And on the flip side, Tony's just letting himself go. So thanks for a good show.
I used
everyone.
to look
Jonah,
like Brad
Tony.
Pitt, but I've really let myself go. So
I hope everyone appreciates this. Jonah, anyone wants to talk to us, contact Dolphin Financial Group. We'll talk more about this. Thanks for a good show, guys. We'll catch you next week, everybody.
All matters discussed in today's show are for informational purposes only.
This show is not investment advice.
Dan Riddle nor Dolphin Financial Group are affiliated or endorsed by any government agency.
Investment advisory services are offered through Dolphin Wealth Management, Inc., a registered investment advisor in the state of Florida.
Insurance products and services are offered through Dolphin Insurance, Inc.
Dolphin Wealth Management, Inc. and Dolphin Insurance, Inc. are affiliated companies doing businesses as Dolphin Financial Group.
You should talk to someone at Dolphin Financial Group before implementing any of these strategies or ideas.